On today's episode of There's a Floodlight That Never Goes Out, we chat to former Barnsley defender and I follow summariser Wayne Goodison about all things likes and how he sees the rest of the season going for the Reds. We also look back on Good Friday's championship fixtures and the one fixture that took place on Holy Saturday. I think it's one that you want to stick around for, even if it is right to the very end, where you will hear an expert Harry Redknapp impression from myself. Hello and welcome back to the There Is a Floodlight That Never Goes Out podcast. As usual, I'm joined by Ed and Will, and I'm delighted to say that today we're joined by Wayne Goodison. How are you? Wayne?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
So let's get straight into the content of today's pod and talk about Barnsley versus Reading yesterday. I think it's fair to say it was a strange game, Wayne. What did you make of it?
You're right, yeah. I mean, it was one of those, wasn't it? I mean, funny enough, I was talking to him earlier about this, and the game kind of followed a very similar pattern to most of the games that I've been to this year, in that not much in the first half. The manager at Barnsley is quite happy to sort of keep it quite tight in the first half, knowing that he can make his changes in the second half and sort of impact the game, which I think he did again at half time and as the game goes on. But you've got to be honest and say that they've probably had two really good chances. One in the first half, where I think to be fair, there's a little bit of a bobble, and unfortunately the lad, well, fortunately for Barnsley, he puts it over the bar and into the Ponty end. And then the miss in the second half, which probably 99 times out of 100, anybody just slots that in. So that was a big let-off. But then, Barnsley have hit the post from a bit of a scramble. They've had a couple of other chances as well. I don't think there was that much in the game. And on the whole, I think the biggest thing was for Barnsley, it was important not to lose that game yesterday. Not have back-to-back defeats. And more so with it being Reading and kind of keeping that gap still from where it was at the start of the game. So, yeah, it was a strange game yesterday, to be fair, but sometimes the luck goes for you, sometimes it goes against you, doesn't it?
It does. And on Barnsley's chances, what did you make of the disallowed goal for Barnsley, sort of the ghost goal that wasn't? Because that would have delivered all 3 points to the Reds had it been given. Yeah,
I think it's one of those, again, when you look at it back, the modern game is, I think if you make any contact whatsoever on goalkeepers these days, the goalkeeper gets the benefit of the doubt. And when I saw it first, I thought, I've seen that corner so many times, into that near post area and crowded sort of on the goal line. At first, I thought, yeah, that's a bit harsh. But when I saw it back, DK kind of makes a little bit of a movement into the goalkeeper, so I understand why the referee's given it. Again, on another day, perhaps that doesn't get given and you come away with the 3 points. But I think the luck's probably evened itself out a little bit there yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to bring you in now, Will. Obviously, you watched the game as a Barnsley fan. Would you agree with Wayne that in terms of the disallowed goal, that those goals just don't get given in the modern game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, like Wayne said, any real contact on the goalkeeper now tends to be a foul. So I think, any other team would have probably seen that same decision given, so you can't feel too hard done by. But, like Wayne said, I think yesterday Ishmael was very happy in the first half, just keeping them pressed in their own half and trying his very best not to concede. Obviously, in the end, it was a really good goal scored by that lad. That first touch was just, brilliant and probably deserved a goal. But I think Barnsley were the better team overall. I think probably Reading had the better chances, but I think there was a stat shown in the first half, and the average position of the Reading players, they were all in their own half.
In their own half, yeah.
And that's that's exactly what Ishmael wants from the Barnsley players, is to keep them pressed in their own half.
Yeah, it's testament to the system, and as much as fans on social media seem to berate Adebayo, Woodrow, Freezer as a front three first half, that they did their job in the sense that they pinned Reading. But I think I'll bring you in again on this way. In second half, when DK and Morris came on, there just seemed to be more threat and we seem to keep the ball in their half a little bit better. Or do you think that was maybe just because of the goal?
No, I think that the thing with the front six, if you like, that they've got there now is that he can kind of mix them up and have different kind of outcomes from them. So I think it's interesting that generally he doesn't seem to start Morris. I think he's got something a little bit different to what the others have all got. I think he probably would have started DK yesterday if he didn't have a bit of a slight fitness doubt. So I understood the fact that he'll do the same on Monday. There'll be a different sort of combination of the three up there, and I think he's been clever in that he sees that as a real strength of the team. The front three go and press really well for 45 minutes to 60 minutes if things are going sort of quite well, and he knows then he can bring fresh legs on and keep that tempo because, as you said before, it's part of the. It's not just part. It's one of the main sort of staples of the whole game plan is to press the opposition as deep as possible and keep them as far away from your goal as possible, and to be able to do that with energy. Listen, let's be honest. That the 5 substitution rule probably helps as well at the moment. But he's absolutely making the most of that, and why shouldn't he?
Yeah. And now we have to go on to our resident Wednesday. Did you see the game the same way we did, Ed? In the sense that Barnsley, though we didn't have the better chances, were probably better than Reading in general play.
Yeah, I mean, I could only catch the first half, but I thought that first half you contained Reading really well. I think Will mentioned the stat in regards to Reading's sort of average positioning, and they just didn't seem to be able to break your press and get through the lines, and just sort of epitomises how you play. And so I thought, obviously we've all seen the Zhao miss, and having seen Zhao for many a year at Hillsborough, it doesn't surprise me that it would be Zhao to miss a chance like that. But no, I think fair play to how you approach the game and play that no fear attitude.
Yeah, I think obviously it's going to be the main talking point is that Zhao missing it. Like Wayne said, it 99 times out of 100 he sticks it in the net. Any other player on the pitch sticks it in the net. It's a freak incident, but it's the sort of thing that goes against you when you're at the top half of the league for the Reds that probably wouldn't have gone for us last season. So there's that. Probably a more broader look at Barnsley's season in general, Wayne. What's it been like actually being at the ground? Is it strange?
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, listen, I've spoken to a few people about it, face to face and social media and stuff like that, and I know I'm very lucky to be actually getting to watch some live football. So I'm really appreciative of that. But it is strange, and I think it's strange for the players. You kind of sat there and it's an echoey stadium. It's just a really kind of it's more odd actually when you turn up to the ground, because you kind of walk up there sort of 45 minutes before and there's absolutely nobody about. You can park right outside the ground, and the away game's the same. It's just you come out afterwards and you're straight out the ground, no problem. So all that's really, really odd, and it's just a bit of a shame, really, that they've had such a good season and the players have done so well and put so much into it that the fans have not. I know they're fully behind them when you they're watching the games and stuff like that, but they've not had a chance to actually get in there and kind of support the team, and more so now when you're coming close to potentially achieving a playoff place and being able to kind of help them get over the line for that. I remember a few years ago getting promotion from Division 1 and how the crowd sort of reacted to that. So it is very, very strange. It's odd watching games and kind of seeing it pan out and listening to it pan out, and hopefully, fingers crossed, they do make the playoffs, and I think they're talking about potentially letting a few fans in for those games, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're talking about possibly a third of Oakwell. To come in, which would be good, because I think the club has 7,000 season ticket holders. I mean, probably each one of them would be able to see the game. It is strange, but do you think almost fans not being in has helped this team, because it is a young team?
Yeah.
And when it makes mistakes, the Oakwell crowd can get on its back.
Yeah, but nothing's ever changed there. I mean, I think that's just it's the expectation from the Barnsley crowd has always been quite high, and it's, years ago when I played, it was no different. Yeah, I mean, I think we've said that. I think definitely it helped last year with sort of taking the pressure off a little bit, and the younger players, not having that sort of that pressure, if you like. And I think this year there's been times when we've sort of in commentary when we've been doing the games, we've sort of said afterwards or spoke about it half time off air, saying, you could just imagine the crowd getting a bit frustrated here because we're 0-0 at half time, and they perhaps expect more. Because that's just the modern football fan, though. I'm not just saying that's just particular to Barnsley fans. I think that's just the modern football fan. The expectations totally different now, and they want things a little bit quicker and a little bit more on demand. But I do think there has been times when perhaps that's just helped the players just not get caught up in that emotion of and tense. Where the thing is with it, actually, when you're playing, you don't really notice the crowd, but you do notice the crowd before the game and at half time, and if there's a lull in the game, you do notice and you pick up on that tension. But I think certainly as well going away from home, it's been a big factor for us going away from home, because I think they've just been able to just be very relaxed and not have the opposition's crowd perhaps getting on to them for the style of play or how they perceive us as a club, So I think it's worked for us to do in general. I'd agree with you on that.
I think it's interesting, Wayne, that you mention the style of play, and that has been something that's almost been critiqued by other clubs.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those where, while, Ishmael does play a very direct style of football, it's got Barnsley up into 5th in the Championship. So, direct or not, it's certainly working the way we want it to work.
Listen, it's professional football. So the bottom line is, as a manager, you are tasked with getting results out of your team, because if you don't, then you lose your job.
Yeah.
So whichever way you go and play, the thing that I find really interesting when I'm watching the games is all these teams that come, and yesterday was no different. There's obviously something gone on in the dugout, commentary. I think it's brilliant. I find really interesting. They all kind of, on a lot of them, have a bit of a moan about the style of play and how we go about it, but yet not many seem to hold. And even away, the away game, they tend to try and change the way they would play the game.
Oh, sorry, Wayne. I think we lost you for a bit there. Is your microphone covered or something?
Oh, no, you're there.
There you go. I got you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think yesterday they're a football inside, as people like to say, and they like to play out from the back and play through the thirds, and So why not stick with that? If that's the way you play, then why not stick with that? Why come to Barnsley and go, well, we'll play long because you're playing long?
Yeah.
Because Barnsley won't go to Reading and say, oh, well, they play out from the back and play through the third, so we'll do the same. Mm-hmm. The manager will just stick by the courage of his convictions and play his style. So the amount of teams that I think have fallen into the trap this year has been remarkable. The ones that haven't, and I know we beat Norwich at home in the cup, but and Brentford came and played their style of play and won the game, deserved to win the game. Norwich came in the cup. There wasn't much in it. We won it, but they played the way that they played. They didn't change their style of play. But all these so-called big teams with big budgets that are expected to be up there, Derby, Stoke, Reading, that are below us, they've all come and had a moan about the style of play, but yet they've tried to play the same way. I just don't understand why you would do that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, like you said, Derby, I remember Wayne Rooney having a right old moan about it, and I just think, like you say, it's it's not forcing you to play anyway. You play how you want, and we'll do what we want.
You play to your strengths.
Yep.
You play to your strengths, don't you? And if you think your strengths are, like the manager thinks his strengths are, he's got 6 forwards that he can utilise, so why not you do that? He's got probably 5-6 strong centre halves that he can utilise, so we'll be strong at the back and we'll be hard to beat. That's fine, no problem. But if you've got players in your team that play a different way, just play the way that it suits them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to bring you in on this one, Ed, in terms of Barnsley's style of play.
Yeah.
When you came to Oakwell, I think you matched us in with the three at the back.
Yeah.
Do you think Barnsley's style of play is something to be sort of groaned at, or do you think, like Wayne says, it just does play into our strengths?
I don't think you can groan it at all, to be honest, because, you know, when I watch you play, it's not your typical direct football in terms of there's no energy. You're a real energetic team, and that's your style. So stick with it. Pardon me. I think when we came to you, we altered the shape slightly, but we did alter our game. You know, look at the performance yesterday against Watford compared to our performance against you, and you know we were so direct against you because that's a weakness. I guess we identified and managed to exploit, but very few teams have done that this season, and it was just our day against you. So I don't think anyone should be groaning at the style of play that the Tykes are playing because it gets results, and I find it enjoyable to watch. And I think people like Wayne Rooney, who go and moan about it, need to show a bit more respect. Personally,
yeah. So once again, moving into the broader picture, how do you see the rest of the season faring for Barnsley, Wayne?
Well, again, it's a different one now, isn't it? Because we kind of talked in commentary at the games 2 or 3 months ago about how the season was going and where potentially we may end up, and I kept saying, well, I think once you get to the last 10 games of the season, the manager will look at it then, and if you're in there with a shout, then great. I think now we're in with a shout. We're sat in 5th. There's a different kind of pressure because I think teams are now a lot more aware of us.
Yeah.
And from a playing point of view, that expectation now to kind of probably try and gain those last sort of 10, possibly 11 points to guarantee a playoff place, it's a different pressure now. So, it was important not to lose yesterday. I think, it's important not to lose on Monday, but probably more so you're thinking, well, if you've got real aspirations now to make it into those playoff places and have a real shot at it, you've probably got to go and win now on Monday, and you've got to take a different attitude and a different mindset from yesterday through. Today will be a recovery day for them. They'll do a little bit, I'm sure, tomorrow, getting ready for Monday, and it is a different dynamic, it's a different pressure. So it'll be interesting to see how, again, like I say, how the players handle it. I think they handled yesterday quite well in that they made sure they didn't lose the game. They got a result out of it. As you said before, possibly could have won it, but maybe a draw was about right. But you have now got to go, well, we've got to really kind of make sure we get these points now and give ourselves a bit of a free hit at the playoffs.
Yeah, I think it is a free hit at the playoffs, and I think even just being in the running for a playoff place is a free hit. I'm going to bring Will on this issue, because we spoke about this in previous episodes, but for Barnsley fans, even if we fall short, this has been a massively successful season. Yeah,
it has, absolutely. I think it's more than anyone would have dreamt of at the start of the season, after just surviving by the skin of our teeth last year. But I think, now, like Wayne said, we are in a position to, give it a good go. And I do think, I said this in a previous podcast, I do think teams won't like facing us in the playoffs because, we're a team who weren't expected to be there in the first place. And the style of football we play is, it takes a lot out of you. And I definitely think if we get into the playoffs, I'm not saying anything will necessarily come from it, but I'm sure we'll give it a good go, and it's exciting to see.
Yeah, it is. It is massively exciting. I suppose, Wayne, you've been there as a player. Do you think the players will be feeling the pressure to get in the playoffs just with them being in the position they're in at the minute?
I wouldn't say so much they'll feel pressure to get in there, but I think the way that they'll be looking at it, and I would guess the way the manager will kind of spin it, is that it's a great opportunity, and you might not get this opportunity again. You said for us, improvement on last season would have been anywhere above 5th, 6th bottom, and you said, well, we've improved. To be sat where we are is like light years away, isn't it, from last year? So I think as a player, I was fortunate. At Crewe, I got promotion there one year, and when you're getting close to it, you're thinking, might not get another chance at this, so you really want to make the most of it. So I'm sure that's the mindset more than anything. Not so much, oh well, we've got to get in the playoffs and we've got to get up. I totally agree with what we were saying before. Anybody that gets us in the playoffs, if it's look at the teams that are in there now that are expecting to be in there, expecting to go up. If it's Brentford, if it's Watford, if it's Swansea, or any others that are at Reading, the pressure on them in that situation is going to be enormous. So nobody will want to play us, because once you get there, listen, you'll want to make the final two steps and get promotion. Of course you will, but the pressure will be all completely on all the other teams. It is now, and that's I go back to it. That's why so many teams are getting so agitated. I think that's why I think a lot of what you saw yesterday, their manager walks off and doesn't go to shake hands. Listen, no matter what happens on the game, no matter what's said on the benches, you go and shake hands afterwards. Karanka did it when Birmingham came. He walked straight off, and I think that tells you a lot. In that the pressure is more for them, and they're frustrated that a classic phrase, teams like Barnsley are taking points off them and are sat in fifth, and they're struggling to get there.
Yeah, definitely. And once again, I'm going to have to try and bring in a neutral view with Ed. I mean, we're looking at the teams in and around Barnsley. Brentford drawn today away at Huddersfield. Swansea lost last night against Birmingham. Do you think it's going to work for Barnsley that they're not expected to be where they are?
100%, and that sort of underdog mentality from the outside. But there's that mentality I get the sense of, as an outside looking in, that Ishmael's got that group obviously believing. But him as a manager, I look at him and the way he defends his players after every game, after a contentious decision or something, and there's a real togetherness in that squad that I don't look at other squads around the playoff area and think there is. If you get what I mean, I think, and like Wayne said, the pressure on the bigger clubs like Swansea and Reading and Brentford, in terms of Brentford, the expectation now is for them as a club that they will reach the Premier League, because we've seen the success of their model, and it's can they get over that, get over the line. So I definitely think it works to your advantage, and you should harness that. And I don't see any reason why you can't be a serious shout for promotion, as much as it pains me to say.
You talk about Brentford and their model, making their fans think they should be in and around the Premier League. For Barnsley, Wayne, do you think after this season, even if the Reds don't achieve promotion to the Premier League, the club will take on a new identity almost, that they are not only a playoff chasing team, but also that they're an attractive club to play for?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of the dichotomy for us as a club, I think, because if you make the playoffs and you don't go up, then you've got to start thinking people like Mowat, Styles, Hellick, clubs are going to be interested in them without a doubt. Do they move on? And then the model of the club is that they've got a certain type of player that they look for, certain age, certain background that they look for to develop and move on. So what impact would that have? Let's say we finish fifth and losing the playoffs. Expectation next year is, well, we've done it this year, so we've got to go and do it again next year. So it's a big ask. It's a big ask, and I don't know. I have said this in commentary. I'm a little bit. I don't think fearful is the right word to use, but I'm a little bit concerned about what will happen if we have a great season and don't make it up. What will happen to the team and the players that are obviously going to be. Listen, Alex played for his country in the week. He put himself in the shop window. Moat's been outstanding this season. I think Styles is getting better and better. I think he's there's others. Callum Britton, I think, has been really good. So without a doubt, teams will be looking and thinking, well, I quite like him, and I quite like him, and knowing full well that they can pay a reasonable fee for them and attract them because they'll get more money. So it's how if that happens, what the plan is behind it to regenerate that team. And I'm sure with the way that the owners have gone about it, I'm sure there's plans in place for that. I think they've learned lessons over the last 2 or 3 years and what's gone right and what's not gone right. But it would be an interesting summer, I think, if on both fronts. I think if we're fortunate to, go up, which would be unbelievable for the club.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how they go about that. Do they kind of? I don't think they will. I don't think they'd throw a load of money at it and say, well, let's get some players in to try and keep us up. I think they'd probably go with what we've got, get some players in, and I'm not saying take a bit of a chance on how it goes, but if we don't, I think it's the same thing. It's an interesting summer as to what happens with the players that are there.
Yeah, definitely. And Will, I'm going to bring you in on this. It is unbelievable to think that we're even in with a shout of being in the Premiership next season. If we do make it to the promised land, would you just be happy to see the club trust the players that have got us there and see where it takes us?
I think you've got to look at it and almost do a little bit of both. Understand that that team's got promoted, so clearly they're at a good enough level. But we have seen sometimes what happens to teams who go up and go for that mentality of just let the same lads have a go at it, and it doesn't always end well. So I think, like Wayne said, it completely depends on what the club want. Whether they want to make a good go at it and try and stay up, or whether they're just happy to kind of receive the money that comes with it, and if we just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I think we've got to now look into the near future then. And Monday we face Luton at Kenilworth Road. It won't be an easy task. How do you see that game going, Wayne?
Yeah, I think you're right. It won't be easy at all because again, you've got to say Luton, a bit like ourselves last year, struggled. Sort of just about managed to stay up, but they've improved because they're mid-table. I think they're 51 points or something like that. So they're
something like that. Yeah,
something like that. So that they're safe. So they can be quite relaxed about Monday. It's always been a tough fixture there as well. But I think for us, again, going back to what we were saying before, the focus for us now and for the players is going to be different in that we've probably we have got much more to play for than Luton have, and it can work both ways. They could turn out and be very relaxed and sort of think, well, we want to put a bit of a dent in them because that's just the way football is. Or we could just have too much focus for them and go and win the game. I personally, I think we're more than capable of going there and winning. I think we're certainly more than capable of going there and not losing. And again, look, that might not be a bad thing either. You just make sure you don't lose the game, but I think he'll freshen it up. I think he'll have a different kind of approach to that one. And if we can go and win it, then you'd say, like anything really, 4 points out of 2 games, one that would have been away, one that would have been at home. You'd take that absolutely, and then you're down to single figures for the playoff spot, aren't you?
Yeah, and Ed, Wednesday recently took a painful defeat at Kenilworth Road.
Yeah.
Is there anything that the Reds need to do to ensure that they can get a good result there?
Yeah, if you go 2-0 up, just make sure you don't just switch off after half time. That would be a good start. No, I can't really tell you much about Luton based off that game from the point of view that it was the epitome of a game of two halves.
Yeah.
I thought, is it Adebayo they've got from
Elijah Adebayo?
Yeah, he's a real talent. So obviously watch out for him. But no, yeah, just if you go to the up, make sure you concentrate. That's all I've got to say on that one.
Yeah, and the Reds will be coming up against a host of old boys. Just off the top of my head, Matty Pearson, Luke Berry, George Moncur, Elliot Lee, Bree as well. So I think our fans sort of know what we're going to be getting with Luton and Nathan Jones as well. Have you got a score prediction for that one, Wayne? To try and shed some light on what you think, how you think that game will go.
Yeah, I'll go 1-0 for us. I think we're capable of keeping it tight. We've shown that all through the season. I think even yesterday, the 2 glaring misses. I think the goal was avoidable. I think just a little bit of a lapse in concentration from the back 3 to let him in the first place. Great finish, got to say that, but I think got a bit too much room to get in there. So I think one of the things that they seem to be really focusing on is being as tight as possible. And that's what I say about, the manager's not really concerned about games being tight or scrappy in the first half, because I think he just feels that with what he can do off the bench, he can go and impact it. So, yeah, I think we're capable of keeping a clean sheet, and I'll go 1-0.
Yeah, that'd be a brilliant result for Barnsley. What about you, Will? How do you think that game will go?
Yeah, I definitely like Wayne said. I can see us keeping it tight. I think might be a game suited more towards Toby Sibic instead of Solbauer, with that Adebayo and is it Harry Cornick? They've got the pace they've got. I think
pace, yeah.
Could do with Sibic perhaps to handle that. But I think I'll go for a 2-0 Barnsley.
Yeah. I think that'd be another welcome. It'd be another welcome result for the Reds, wouldn't it? And Ed, we've got to get your unbiased view on that one. Having seen patches of Barnsley and obviously Luton up close a couple of weeks ago, how do you see that one going for the Reds?
Again, I can't see you guys slipping up at the minute. With the way you're playing and the mentality you seem to have, so I'll go for a 2-0 win for the Tykes.
Once again, that'd be brilliant. So I think we've covered everything that we wanted to cover. Once again, massive thank you to Wayne for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Anytime. You're welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Right, thanks.
Thank you to Wayne for coming on the podcast. We're now going to do a part 2, which is discussing the rest of yesterday's fixtures that didn't involve Barnsley. So naturally, I think we need to go to the games that we don't care about that much first, and start off at Ashton Gate, where the game went pretty much as we said it would, and Stoke won 2-0 there. What did you make of that one, Ed?
The words fail me to describe the excitement I felt towards this game. No, look, again, Bristol, they're not in danger of any relegation threats or anything like that. But what's happened to them?
It's strange, isn't it? Like you look at their team and you look at who's managing them, and you go, A, how are they so low in the table? Because they're 14th now.
Then you think about the start they had.
Yeah. B, the start they had. That's what I was going to say.
The midfield of just Semenyo, Lansbury, Masengo, and Palmer, Casey Palmer, Naki Wells in there. It's a real surprise and shock, and it'll be really interesting to see how they are next season. I'd imagine I trust Nigel Pearson and everything he does, so I definitely still have him as sort of a top 6 potential. But against Stoke, it's Stoke, isn't it? Meh.
Yeah, it is very meh.
Yeah.
Barnsley old boy Jacob Brown getting an assist.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you saw the Fletcher goal. That was a very nice free kick from Fletcher.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was one of those where nothing really to set the teams apart. They had about equal possession, and then at the end of the day, Stoke just scored a really nice free kick and got a bit lucky with the first goal where it ricocheted to their man. But yeah, the Ashton Gate curse continues for Bristol City.
It certainly does. Moving on to another game that we didn't care about. Pride Park, 2-0 victory for Derby County. I think this pretty much means, well, I wouldn't say it means they're definitely safe, but I don't think they're in any danger of dropping down to League One anymore.
Yeah, I'll give them it's a huge win when you look at the context of the other games yesterday. Obviously, spoiler alert, us losing, Coventry losing. Rotherham losing, then we'll get on to the Birmingham game in a bit, I'm sure. But yeah, I think the Rams that win sort of sees them 75% over the line in my eyes, and it wasn't one that I predicted. I thought Luton would do a job on them.
We all did.
Yeah. We did.
But no, fair play to the Rams, and slight shock, but another one, like you said, it isn't massively on our top priorities.
It's not really on our radar. So I think once again, naturally, I think we've got to go to a game that we all cared about, and that was at Vicarage Road.
Yeah.
It was Watford 1, Sheffield Wednesday 0. Let's not talk about Andy Giddins, Ed, because He's probably not someone who we'll be having on the podcast anytime soon after yesterday's display.
Yeah, that was the most frustrating thing of the whole afternoon was Andy Giddings on commentary for Radio Sheffield. Obviously they used him for iFollow. From minute one, just belittling us. I wouldn't have a problem if he was saying valid criticism, but he's saying like, oh well, Watford haven't even got out of first gear. And in fairness, they're definitely not turned it on like they can do. But we matched them toe for toe since minute one in that game, right till the end. Their goal was an own goal. First half, they had a few decent chances. Second half, we kept them really quiet. Our problem, as it has been all season, is we get to the final third and all of a sudden we become incompetent. But yeah, Andy Giddings, he's Radio Sheffield. You'd imagine some level of partisanship towards the Owls, as it's the local club. But he seems to hate us for no reason. And yeah, but on the game itself, I thought I was disappointed for starters by Watford and how they played, because they really sort of let us have the ball and dictate play at times. I mean, you could see their quality, and the likes of Ismail Assar. You sat there thinking, how is he still in this league? But no, the problem is you isolate that game, a 1-0 loss away at one of the best teams in the league, one of the informed teams in the league, with the performance like we put in for 2/3 of the pitch, and you're thinking, oh, it's a real positive to take. Unfortunately, we need to be winning games right now, and it was another nail in the coffin. And I think, unfortunately, that coffin's a little bit too tight now.
Yeah, and just on the Watford goal, though, in what I'm going to try and do an audio version of Josh Windas's tweet, was it offside?
Now, at the time, I said no. My dad said yes. Having looked at it again, I think it is offside because Leeds has no reason to go for that ball. Was it Isaac's success? I think it was. He was behind it. Yeah. If Isaac's success is there, Leeds has no reason to go for it. However, with that being said, Leeds nearly had scored an own goal about 3 minutes earlier. So unfortunately, it looked like it can be one of those days. But I think that's a testament to how we played, that their only goal came from Tom Lees.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring in Will on this one as well. Do you think it was offside, or do you think the goal should have stood, and it did stand? Sorry.
I think with a Barnsley head on, seeing Tom Lees put it in his own net is, there's a bit of happiness there. But I understand what Ed's saying. How if it's given offside, then he doesn't really have a reason to play for the ball. But I guess that's the thing we've seen in the Championship this year. This kind of delayed flagging for offsides, and there's definitely controversy around it. But this is more of a question to you, Ed. You mentioned how you went toe to toe with them in the game I watched against Norwich. I thought you did the same with them. They just sort of had a bit more quality in the final third. Is that more frustrating than just getting battered every week, or how does it? Because ultimately it's the same result, but what does that feel like?
Yeah, you can look at it two ways, really. I guess you can look at it one way and think, like you said, at the end of the day, it's another loss, and we need to be winning games. But I'm looking at it from the point of view that the players out there showed that they cared. They showed a bit of fight, and the thing for me is it's positive steps. I know, unfortunately, Darren Moore has tested positive for COVID, so I wasn't there. And obviously, I wish him all the best in his recovery and hope he's okay. But there's the signs under Moore's tenure that there is real change in the style of play and how we play and how we approach games. So I think it's more of a positive than a negative. It's frustrating that it's happened so late in the season. That shift on emphasis. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, football's about winning games. But if we've already accepted, which 99% of the fan base has, I think, that we're going down, I want to see in these last remaining, is it 8 games I think we've got left?
Yeah.
7 or 8 games to, a bit of fight, but the groundwork for next season. And players showing that, because we've got a lot, you've got to remember, a lot of our squad's out of contract at the end of this season. So it's who wants to fight for a new contract and who's happy just to bugger off to a new team in the summer.
Yeah.
And then there's certainly there's some players you're looking at thinking, yeah, you're off to, I don't know, Middlesbrough next season, or a Bristol. And there's some you think, fair play to you. You're giving this a real good go.
Yeah.
Cough, cough, Adam Reach. I'll let you decide which one I'm on about there.
We'll move on to another game now that affected the Reds. Bournemouth 3, Middlesbrough 1. It means the chairs are really breathing down the neck of us. What did you make of this one, Will?
Yeah, like you say, it's frustrating. I almost think seeing Bournemouth pick up more points, but it's what you've got to expect. The fact that they're not in the playoff spots alone is, in a way, shocking. But I think under Woodgate, you've seen two very different Bournemouth sides. You've seen a kind of poor sort of team I think we played against. I think Barnsley were great in that second half. I think Bournemouth weren't on their best, but watching Bournemouth yesterday, they were just so clinical in front of goal.
Yeah.
Billings popping up with another goal. He's proved he's getting some important goals in for them. And while it's frustrating, I think you've almost got to expect it, and Barnsley have got to use their points advantage to in favour of them, and not almost rely on teams like Bournemouth losing, because they are expected to win these games, I think.
Yeah, exactly. When you're up there at the top of the table, it's not a case of looking at other teams' results, expecting other teams to do you a favour. You've just got to take care of your own games, haven't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you've got to expect that everyone around us is going to win. And
I also think.
Sorry, go on. Ed.
So I also think you've got the sort of luxury of it's only really Bournemouth that are making a real push for the top six, and so you're going to be drastically unlucky and undeserved, in my opinion, to fall in that 7th place when you're looking at the teams around you, because it really is any of Brentford, Swansea, Barnsley, or Reading. Any of those four, none of them are safe. None of them are well solidified. So I think, like you said, you've got to focus on your own game at that end of the pitch, at that end of the table. Sorry, you just can't rely on others.
And you talked about teams not really making a playoff push. I think one team whose playoff push might have ended yesterday was Cardiff City, who suffered a 1-0 defeat at home to Nottingham Forest. And in this game, looking at the stats, maybe it wasn't reflected on the pitch. It looked like the team who shithousers got shithoused.
Yeah.
What do you think about this one, Will?
I'm just looking at the stats now. Cardiff had 18 shots and only 3 on target, and clearly that's definitely not what Mick McCarthy would have wanted. So I think, like you say, that could see this promotion push from Cardiff put to an end. And Notts Forest have definitely pulled themselves out of a sticky situation in the second half of the season, and pretty sure they've guaranteed their safety now. I think probably a good result for Barnsley. It's another team, I guess you could say, let one more team not to worry about.
Yeah, just more on that. Cardiff's XG was 1.28, Nottingham Forest was 0.41. So I think it was a game that Cardiff will have rued their chances. But more of a positive for Barnsley that another team has fallen away from the playoff push. Moving on to the only game that took place today in the second division, which was at the John Smith Stadium, where Huddersfield drew 1-1 with Brentford. Now, I don't know if any of you lads watched this game, but Brentford were massively, massively unlucky not to win.
Yeah, I did. I watched the game. Huddersfield, they seemed to nick that goal fairly early on, and then from then it was just all Bournemouth, wasn't it? But ultimately, while they did equalise, Huddersfield held them to that draw, and probably a bit of a. I don't think anyone really saw that one coming. I think we all had Brentford winning that one.
We all had Brentford wins, didn't we?
Yeah.
No, but to be fair, we what they say, never back the early kick-off. So it's a classic case.
Famous Gandhi quote. I think a 1-1 draw there. It wasn't a fair result, but it's a championship. these things happen. Moving on to a result that saw the Swans get a taste of their own medicine. And Birmingham won, Swansea City 0. How beautiful was it to see Swansea lose to a dubious penalty?
Oh, it was just everything I wanted, I think. After the Barnsley game, putting this on, and obviously Jutkiewicz missed that early on penalty, and I thought that was probably Birmingham's big chance to get a lead and try and get something out of the game. But then, yeah, they just, I think we mentioned it in the preview how Swansea just seem to they have a lot of the ball. They'll have most of the possession, but they just don't seem to do all that much with it. Don't really threaten the goal too much. Etheridge had a pretty good game in net, and then like you say, the shithousery of the last minute penalty going to Birmingham, and Hogan puts it away.
For me, that was a sort of final nail in our coffin in terms of survival hopes, and it did definitely. On any other team apart from Birmingham, seeing Swansea concede the last minute penalty, that definitely should not have been a penalty. Can we just make that really clear? Would have, they've been really sweet, but unfortunately, just another thing that didn't go our way yesterday. But
it didn't go your way, and it also didn't go the way of Rotherham and Coventry City. Moving on to Coventry City. They lost 3-0 at Loftus Road. We predicted that they'd go down to QPR here, but I think it was more the manner of the defeat that the Sky Blues fans are disappointed with.
Yeah, I mean, they went 1-0 down after literally like a minute or so, and clearly that's not what you want. And then I think it was followed up by an own goal only, 10-15 minutes later. So they were kind of out the game before it even really got going, which I can see why is frustrating for the fans. And like you say, we all had QPR backed on this one. They've been the second half of the season, they've become a pretty solid team, well put together. So take nothing away from QPR. I think they were brilliant in this match, and I think the season. I know it's 46 games in the season, and that going into it. But I think if the season was a 50-game season, I think QPR would be looking at the playoffs and saying, can we make a late run for it? They have been very good since January, since they brought in Charlie Austin. On Coventry, Ed, it's like at the wrong end of the table. I think they're in real danger now of dropping down to League One at the first hurdle.
I completely agree, and it's a bit sad to say that actually, because I think Coventry are quite a good side. It just flat at the minute. They seem void of any ideas, and for one reason or other, they obviously aren't getting the results, and the manner of the performances aren't giving any sort of comfort. And like you said, with Birmingham winning yesterday, with Derby winning, all of a sudden, that group of 5 or 6 teams that could go down, it's now 3, really, isn't it? With us, Rotherham, and Coventry. I mean, it is worth noting that Coventry have a game in hand on Birmingham and Derby, but they're in real trouble, and all it takes is for Rotherham to win 2 or 3 of their games in hand. And before you know it, the bottom 3 is decided with games to spare.
It almost decides itself. And I was speaking about this with someone earlier, and we spoke that when Barnsley were down there last season in a similar position to what Wednesday are in now, there was a lot of teams that it seemed that were packed into the relegation scrap. And there was also the cushion almost that if Wigan's 12-point deduction came through, that Barnsley could stay up. Whereas now it does almost look like it's a shootout between 4 teams to try and stay in the league. Ultimately, with 3 of them probably going, well, not probably, 3 of them will go down. Moving on to a team whose very faint hopes of survival were given a little boost yesterday with a 1-0 over Blackburn, and that's Wycombe Wanderers. I think it was a very even match, and if you go on Info Goal, the XG was favoured towards Blackburn, but Wickham are scrappers, and well, you can comment on this. That they never give up, and they won't until the fat lady sings.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's sort of the attitude that's been stated by Gareth Ainsworth throughout. They've even when they lose games, he never seems to be disappointed if he knows his players have put up a good fight. And I think we said in the preview that Blackburn, nothing to play for really, and Wickham show this kind of never die attitude, and we did almost predict that Wickham might get something out of this game, and good for them, they managed to go and get all 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, I said that I predicted a Wickham win for this one, if I remember correct, because it's that classic case of Blackburn have nothing to play for, and as you said, very faint hopes for Wickham, too faint in my opinion. But I think it's epitomised this game actually by, Wickham only had 31% of the possession that whole game, yet still had an XG of 1.91, whereas Blackburn only had one of 1.96. And I know XG is very controversial. It is
controversial,
but the stats are there for people to interpret, and I think it's a testament to Ainsworth as a manager, and perhaps is it another sign of his Mowbray's time at Rovers sort of petering out to an end, because that squad is
shouldn't be where
good
it is
quality for the Championship. It should be a squad challenging for top 6. You got likes of Harvey Elliott in there, Tom Tribal, Lewis Holtby, Barry Douglas. These are top quality Championship players.
I think it says it all that they have the 3rd top scorer in the league of Adam Armstrong. They have the 2nd top assister in the league in Harvey Elliott, yet they're 15th.
Yeah.
Like, if you give Barnsley Adam Armstrong banging in 19 goals, mate, we're in the top 2. And the fact that they've not even sustained a playoff charge, I think it's not good enough from Mowbray. And I'm going to ask you, Will, having looked at what Blackburn fans are saying, and we played Blackburn about a month ago now, and they were terrible. Yeah. Is it time for Mowbray to go? And if so, who do you bring in?
I mean, yeah, that's the age-old question, isn't it? But I definitely think it's time for him to go. I just think, like you say, everything I've seen of Blackburn this season, they're just, I know it's that typical saying, but they're a team of individuals, really. You've got Armstrong playing well on his own, scoring goals, etc. But there's no real team spirit at Blackburn. And I think, you've got to point the finger at the manager there. So it's a case of bringing someone in who the board think will get a sort of team spirit going, get the team playing as one unit, and with the players they've got, Blackburn can be a very good team under the right manager.
I think also they've sort of established themselves as sort of the place to go if you're a young player in the Northwest. And is that Mowbray's influence? And if Mowbray was to leave, would that pull go? But then are you compromising getting talented youngsters who are going to come in for a season or two over making a sustained push to get out of the division? So I think if Mowbray was to go, that's the problem. Is now the 2 months ago, a month ago, the group of managers available were strong. You had Paul Cook, the Cowleys, people like that, and they've all sort of individually been snapped up by upper echelon League One clubs, when perhaps they could have got Championship clubs and definitely deserved to, in my opinion. So you're left with Neil Harris. I know Mark Hughes has said he'd want another job, but would he be willing to go to Blackburn? Probably not. Would Blackburn fans want him? Definitely not, in my opinion. So there seems to be a bit of a void of any top quality managers out there.
I agree with you on that one, Ed.
Yeah, so should we go to Deepdale next for Preston versus Norwich? And before we get into this game, I'd just like to talk about Jacob Sorensen. And for me, the most underrated player in the Championship this season. I would make that claim. The way he's filled in the left back and now finally being able to play his more natural central defensive midfield role. And any more thoughts on that game from you two?
I think it's a game that Norwich would have wanted to have won going into it. And certainly, looking at the stats and even, just with the eye test, the chances Norwich had to put the game to bed before Brad Potts' 95th minute equaliser, they really will be ruin the way the game went. And But it's a minor blip in what's going to be a seamless transition to the Premier League for Norwich. It was a weakened defence for Norwich. I think that's fair to say. They still performed fine.
Definitely. I mean, I think I read yesterday that they're only 2 wins off mathematically being promoted. I might be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read.
I'd imagine it's not much. You look at the table, and I think that 15 points clear of Brentford, 15 points clear of Swansea. So yeah, I don't think you're wrong on that front. I think it's 2 more wins.
Any team that has a front four of Teemu Pukki, Todd Cantwell, Kieran Dowell, and Emi Buendia, regardless of what your back line, you're gonna be all right in this league. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree with that. So moving on to the final game that we haven't covered yet. I don't think it's going to go down as a classic, but we have to cover it, and that's Millwall 1, Rotherham 0. 1-0 win for Millwall. Jed Wallace scoring the only goal in that game. But it wasn't a game that was shall we say, boring. Richard Wood was sent off in the 56th minute. But I think the most key event of the 90 minutes was Michael Smith's penalty miss in the 87th minute, which would have secured Rotherham a point. What are your thoughts on this one, Ed? Because Rotherham picking up points isn't something that the Owls want.
It isn't at all. But we said, I think, in the pre-match preview that this was always going to be a game there wasn't many goals in it, and it was going to be sort of maybe who could breach each other first and then make it count, because they are 2 teams that when they get chances they make it count. And Rowett versus Warne wasn't ever going to be a classic. It wasn't a classic, but Millwall, 10th place after a couple of months ago, there's a bit of worry almost for Lions fans, where the season might be going.
Yeah.
But again, they've sort of picked it up, and fair play to them. They're steadily climbing and just having a nice little end to the season.
Yeah, and seeing as though we're coming towards the end of today's episode, I thought something we could do would be to do our Championship Player of the Game Week. So starting off with you, Ed, who was your Player of the Game Week?
Tough one. Very tough one. There weren't many standouts. I don't think. There was no one you thought, wow, this is an obvious one.
Yeah.
I don't know. You put me on the spot there.
Sorry, lad.
I'm gonna go for James Garner, Forest. I thought that was a cultured performance against Cardiff, and got a goal. And I think it obviously didn't really work out for him at Watford, for whatever reason. Tactically, he's obviously really highly rated in the Manchester United setup, and I'm really glad to see he's gone to Forest, and he's doing well. He's performing well, and Reds fans love him. Yeah. So he a bit put on the spot there, but that's who I'm going to go for.
Yeah, just to paraphrase, Harry Redknapp, he'll go right to the very top in terms of James Garner. And Will, I think you'll have had a bit more time to prepare for this one than Ed. But who was your Player of the Game Week?
I think I would go for Jefferson Lerma at Bournemouth. Got a goal from sort of defensive midfield, which he isn't expected to do, and sort of won. I think it was about 10 duels in the middle of the field, and that was really important against that Middlesbrough side. His pass completion was really good. So yeah, I'd say mine was Jefferson Lerma.
Yeah, good stuff. And I'm actually in agreement with Ed. I think James Garner was excellent for Nottingham Forest away at the Cardiff City Stadium. And I think it was a performance that it's the type of performance he's been putting in week out for Forest since he signed for them on loan. But it was topped off with the winning goal, and I think he deserves the title of There's a Floodlight Never Goes Out podcast Game Week Player 39 of the week.
What
I think that's in
title to
terrible order.
I'm sure he's buzzing with that one.
Something to monitor a big cabinet for sure. Many more to come.
That was a shambles. If you've made it this far, just know
You
that
deserve an award as well.
this episode was a nightmare to put together. But thank you to Wayne Goodison for coming on. We do appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.